What's up, everybody? We are back with another episode of Havlicek Stole the Pod. I am your host, Alex Goldberg. With me, as always, is Dr. Justin Quinn and Daniel Donabedian. And today, we have a special guest. As always, it's Cyro Asseo from HoopsHype. Welcome, Cyro. We're going to talk about the Celtics. We're going to talk about trades as the deadline starts to come into focus and we start getting into silly season. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I hope you guys had a great holiday season and a great start to your new year, and I'm happy to start it with you guys.
Fabulous. Dr. Quinn, how are your holidays?
Well, like I was telling y'all off air, we had a huge earthquake this morning. Everything is still standing. So as far as those things go, that's great. So I guess a great holiday.
We take those. Daniel, yourself, how was your holiday?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I was in New England. It was a white Christmas, which is nice because sometimes when I'm on Cape Cod, it doesn't really snow. It's just kind of gross. But yeah, it was cool to see the snow this year. And then obviously went back to New Hampshire, and there's always snow there.
My holidays were great. They were a nice mix of doing nothing and then doing lots of things all at once, as is very typical of my life. Had a great time. And we're going to talk about what the Boston Celtics have been up to over the holidays. It's been some good, it's been some not as good, and what their future plans might look like. So let's get into the news real quick. Since we last recorded, Boston has played 4 games, which they have won 3 of. They started with another beatdown on the Indiana Pacers, who are looking increasingly hapless, 140-122. Then they went to Portland and they lost 114-108. Some dubious late game execution really killed the C's there. They survived in Utah, holding on to win 129-119 in what was a pretty competitive game, basically until the middle of the fourth quarter. And then they won pretty comfortably in Sacramento, 120-106. Sacramento Kings are not a very good basketball team. So we'll talk a little bit about some of what happened there, but a couple of bullet points that we wanted to note just real quick. Big stretch for Luka Garza, who has been playing a lot more and has been doing pretty well. Admittedly, some of these matchups he did better than others. He was quite strong in Utah and Sacramento against the raw size of Justin's guy, Donovan Clingan. He did not have as much success there, but overall playing pretty well lately. Jordan Walsh and Josh Minott, after having very good starts to the season, kind of past few months, have been fading a little bit. Jordan Walsh notably started the game last night in Sacramento, played 5 minutes, and then did not see the court for the rest of the night. Josh Minott has been effectively out of the rotation for at least these last few games. Hugo Gonzalez continues to earn more time and become an impact defensive player, among others, even though Joe Mazzulla got mad at him for not dunking the ball last night. And the big story, at least that we've noticed, aside from the metronome Jaylen Brown just continuing to dominate, is that Derek White is fully back in this NBA season, punctuated by a 7-block performance against the Utah Jazz. He looks outstanding lately. So is there anything that we missed as far as those wins and the loss to Portland are concerned? Cyro, did you catch any of these games?
I see a little bit of every game, with League Pass, so I haven't sat down probably for a full Celtics game this year, but obviously looking forward to seeing them play the Heat. That'll be like whenever I'll see them like fully. But one of the things for me, I think, just as you said, I actually talked to Buddy Scott, who's part of the team and a caps strategist for the team, and he was a guy who was telling me at the G League Showcase that he is just as surprised as everybody, just jokingly, obviously, but saying that it's almost a happy surprise. And every time I check in to see, Hugo Gonzalez, obviously Josh Minott's minutes starting to wane a little bit, but it seems like every time you turn on the Celtics, there's a different guy who's kind of having a streak that you're like, it's awesome to see. And it's just an abundance of talent on this team, and everybody having their opportunity at different points of this year is great, especially while we wait for Tatum to eventually return.
Dr. Quinn, what did you see in these 4 games? Is there anything that we missed that we should harp on?
I don't know if it's something that we missed so much as what the Celtics have been missing, which is perimeter defense early in the game. I'm not sure why. I mean, I'm sure why these teams keep coming out and turning into the Miami Heat when they were playing the Celtics in the 2023 postseason. The sloppy perimeter defense early is part of it, but there's got to be something else going. I think teams are starting to cue in that this is a good formula to beat the Celtics when you are a similarly or less talented team, and just hope that the shooting variance helps them, because we're seeing teams like the Sacramento Kings, who have been one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country, not really looking like it. So there's got to be something going on there. I can't quite put my finger on exactly what it is, because it's not just the perimeter defense problems, but it is something I'm going to be keeping an eye on.
I have some thoughts on that, but I want to turn to Daniel first and see if there's anything else that we missed.
Yeah, to Justin's point, I'll add, I think they're just really trying to commit to the help defense and trying to double guys to generate some turnovers. Joe talked about the whole creating chaos thing, and that's a big way they want to do it, but inevitably, you're going to leave a guy open. And we've seen that hurt them at times, but they're also kind of strategic with it too. I mean, Russell Westbrook shot the 3 ball a little bit better this season, but they know what they're doing when they leave certain guys like that open and try and go for the steal. But as for things we missed, I'll just emphasize how much they shot themselves in the foot against the Blazers. That last minute was crazy. They turned it over like 4 times. Derek and JB were just not on the same page. But that's a rarity. We saw them correct that the next game. And besides JB being awesome, like you mentioned, Alex, I'll say Anthony Simons has also been impressive in this latest stretch. He was good against the Kings last night, and these are the games like no one's going to remember. Like no one's going to be talking about, oh, remember when the Celtics beat the Kings by double digits in January? They're like, no one's going to be talking about this, but they count all the same, whether they're beating the Lakers or they're beating the Kings at like midnight when most of the East Coast isn't watching. They still count, and Joe's made them realize that. He's made them care about every game, which is more than you could say for some other NBA teams.
I wanted to jump off that perimeter defense point really quickly, because I do think, we've noticed that it's a challenge for this team sometimes, that while they take and make a lot of threes, they also give up a lot of threes. I think a lot of this is schematic. It's just the way that the Celtics base defense operates, where they tend to not blitz as much unless it's against like an elite shot creator on the perimeter. They tend to apply much more pressure when players kind of cross into the paint. That's when you start to see blitzes and late switches and late help and things like that, to try and throw people off their rhythm when they like take the ball inside. They don't fly around in the same way on the perimeter. And I think particularly it's been the case this year, because for all of the strengths that the Celtics team has shown in terms of like their toughness and their discipline on, for example, like crashing the boards and boxing out and doing all of these little things, they are an undersized team, and they have been an undersized team all year. When we saw, the peak of the Joe Mazzulla Celtics defensive system, everybody who was on the floor, with the exception of maybe Peyton Pritchard, was 6'4" or above. And I think that fundamentally changes the way that you're able to defend the perimeter, particularly like at the peak of this team, when it's 5 guys in Derek White, Drew Holiday, Al Horford, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum, who all have size, who all have length, and who are incredibly disciplined about switching and recovering. And like, it's just a fundamentally different thing. At a certain point, like Peyton Pritchard, he just is physically limited when it comes to stuff like this. Anthony Simons has been trying hard, according to Joe Mazzulla, and it seems like he's working on it, on his defensive presence. But he's just not fast enough to actually, make that kind of an impact that we've been used to. So all things being equal, I think the fact that this defense is where it is kind of a minor miracle to some degree to their personnel. And hopefully when Jason Tatum comes back, it will continue to trend up. Next up, the Boston Celtics will be playing the red hot Los Angeles Clippers. Yes, you heard that right. The Clippers have won, what is it, like 3 in a row, 5 in a row, something like that? 6 in a row.
All by double digits, too.
And Kawhi Leonard is fully operational. The update has taken hold. All systems are go. Aimbot is on. That guy is cooking right now. Weirdly enough, Ivica Zubac has been out for a decent amount of time, and this has actually helped the Clippers' floor spacing a lot. Brook Lopez is finding a nice rhythm as their starting center, and they're red hot despite their terrible record, and a team that should be taken seriously. They will then go to play the Chicago Bulls, who are trending in the opposite direction. It's back to the 9 spot for the Chicago Bulls, our eternal Eastern Conference playoff team. They are not bad enough to tank. They are not good enough to make the playoffs outright. It's the Chicago Bulls. And then they cap things off with a homestand against the Denver Nuggets, who are absolutely decimated with injuries right now, despite being an upper echelon contender when healthy. Nikola Jokic is out for a month. Jonas Valanciunas, the backup center who is supposed to take the pressure off of Jokic, is out for a month. Tonight, the only player in Denver's lineup who would be a regular starter that is starting is Jamal Murray. Aaron Gordon is still out. This has been a rough stretch for Denver, and yet they're still holding steady at the 3 seed. So we'll see. And so with those next 3 in mind, do we have any predictions as far as how that is going to go, should go, etc.?
I think they're going to lose to the Clippers just because they're going to think this is the Clippers team that they've been expecting to play all season and get smacked in the face. Kind of how they've been being smacked in the face, but by a better team that may have been recently. So the other 2 games, I think they're going to win.
Thoughts, Daniel, Cyro?
Yeah, I would say 2-1. I'm not entirely sure who they might fall to, but this is a team that's shown they've been good enough to win more often than not, but without being like completely consistent where they're just going to steamroll everybody. Maybe they fall to the Nuggets at home, even though they're shorthanded. I think they'll be maybe amped up to go home because this is the last game of the road trip against the Clippers. So maybe they can get up for that. And the fact they'll be playing Kawhi, Harden, some star players. Maybe they'll slog a bit against the Nuggets since they don't have their usual stars. The Bulls, like you said, haven't been very good, so I think they should beat them. But overall, they've proven that they can reliably win like 2 out of 3 in whatever slate they have.
Cyro, what do you think about this next 3?
I think they'll go 2-1 in this stretch if possible, due to the fact that, going off what you guys said, I think really the Clippers are a team that are playing with desperation, which has allowed them to play better. We've seen Kawhi just go insane and show that he's still capable of being the player that, we've seen Kawhi be in the past, while James Harden is able to create offense for them. I think that's just the team that's really the one that throws me off. And then I think the Nuggets and the Bulls are just the Bulls without Josh Giddey with that hamstring injury, and then the Nuggets are depleted. I just think those are 2 gimme games that if you're Joe Mazzulla, you're going to lose your mind if you lose those 2 games. I think those are the 2 games that you should win. You look at a schedule, you see what the opponent is, and you know that those are the games that you need to win. And I think the Clippers is the one team. Also, obviously they're going to the Clippers. It's an away game, and it's always hard to win on the road. So I think that being the other factor in that, I think is why I think the other 2 games are going to be a lot easier for them to win. I think Boston plays the Bulls at home, and then they play the Nuggets at home. So that 2-game homestand, I think you got to win your home games.
I'll say it. They're going 3-0. The Clippers have been having a nice run here, but those guys are old as hell. It's all geezers over there. And the Celtics are a younger, faster, more aggressive team. If they play the way that they should play, they will win that game. And then, yeah, I'm just not buying the corpse of the Chicago Bulls or the husk of the Denver Nuggets at this time. If Jokic were healthy, this would be, of course, a completely different ball game. But I mean, Denver is just absolutely decimated right now, and I fear for my Nuggets fan friends a little bit, of which I have a handful. But yeah, we'll see what this next month looks like for them. So as mentioned before, Nikola Jokic is out for a month. How is this going to affect the MVP race? Obviously, the Celtics have a potential MVP candidate in Jaylen Brown, who is averaging near 30 points a game, career best for him, and getting some All NBA buzz despite not getting the All Star love or the Eastern Conference Player of the Month love, which he's not thrilled about based on his latest posts. Does Jaylen Brown have a shot of getting into this MVP race at all? Cyro, what do you think?
I think definitely. I think first off, he should be. Before the injury, I think the consensus was what Jokic, Shea, depending on who you had 1 and 2, then Luka, then it'd be what JB, Giannis, Kane. It kind of like that 4-5 spot. It was like kind of pick your poison already. So I think he should be, especially with Jokic, I guess, like having this injury kind of puts him potentially out of the running if he misses X amount of games. So I just think if Shea gets hurt, I think JB is one of the guys who can come in, and JB and Cade are the 2 guys that I've personally think should, like, right after the Jokic and Shea and even Luka. I feel like Luka's really firmly in that 3rd spot so far. I just feel like it's been obvious. JB's just that engine. And I know the whole, he, like the defensive liability that he is, but dude, he literally is one of the most clutch players in the league, if not the most clutch right now. He's consistently the cog of that engine, and he just keeps them going. And I just don't think New York would be in this position if they had all those players except Jalen Brunson. He's kind of like the heart and the soul of that team. And I feel like MVP candidates, similar with Kate Cunningham, they make the players around them better. They're not just ceiling raisers, but they're floor raisers. And that's kind of what I think represents an MVP candidate. I think JB and also Kate are both like exemplifying that.
And to be clear, you're referring to Jalen Brunson, not Jaylen Brown, when you're saying
yes, JB. Yes, I know. I thought that was a given, and I know some people are going to be like, "Well, Jaylen Brown should be in the MVP race," which I think like he's having an.
When you said defense, I figured out who you meant.
Yes, totally opposites.
Yeah, I don't know. I think as far as Jaylen Brown's MVP chances are concerned, I think he's putting up numbers that he should be in that conversation. I gotta be honest though, this is pretty clearly Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's award to lose with Jokic missing. Like as much as we like to talk about Cade and Jalen Brunson and Jaylen Brown and all these other guys, if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is not the MVP at the end of this year, something will have gone horribly wrong. He should be the overwhelming favorite to win this award. Jaylen Brown might have a pretty good case to be a first team All NBA guy though, which I think would be a pretty nice notch on his belt, to say the least. I mean, Nikola Jokic was going to win MVP, and now he will be disqualified from that award. But the other thing I do want to note is that Jaylen Brown is sneakily a little closer to also missing the 65 game threshold than we maybe would like to believe. So it's going to get a little tight there. We'll see. Yeah, speaking of Jaylen Brown and awards, he came in 6th as far as his early All-Star game voting fan returns are concerned. He also missed out on Player of the Month in the Eastern Conference to the aforementioned Jalen Brunson, even though he did win Player of the Week 2 out of 3 times in the month of December, and tied Larry Bird's record for 30-point games in consecutive order at 9. He did not break it, fell just short in Utah to do so. So yeah, Jaylen Brown's been on a great stretch lately, but it seems like he's a little miffed that he's not quite getting the love that he maybe thinks he should be getting. Has to be said, he's an NBA basketball player. This is fairly common with NBA basketball players. But what do we think? Should Jaylen Brown be higher in All-Star voting? Should he have won Eastern Conference Player of the Month? What say you? Daniel, you go first.
I mean, all-star voting is like whatever. The fan voting is always
fair.
ridiculous. Yeah, like Josh Hart's high up there. Not saying he's not a great player, but like clearly the fans have a weird impact on it. Like, remember Andrew Wiggins, where they had like a K-pop campaign for him to be an all-star? Then they have something like Denny from the Blazers also had a good year, but he's really high up in the fan voting. Weird stuff happens with that, so he shouldn't take that personally. The player of the month thing, I think he might have an argument to be made. Like you said, Alex, 2 out of the 3 weeks is kind of a pattern there. You would think maybe he would get it. I think Brunson has the advantage of the NBA Cup stuff. He did win the NBA Cup, so that's an extra game for him where he played well. And to just go back to the MVP stuff, I agree, Alex. Shea is definitely the front runner by far right now. But Jaylen Brown should get an MVP vote at the end of the season. Will it be first place? No, but he should get one. And I looked back at it, he's never had any votes. Tatum has, but no matter the year, Jaylen Brown has never had an MVP vote. And I think that's going to change this year with just how he's been playing. But he's always taken some of these awards things personally. And hey, whatever you can use for fuel when you're playing this great, why not? I know Joe Mazzulla must love that.
Sure. Cyro, Justin, any thoughts to add about Jaylen's latest month and the lack of recognition that he's gotten?
I'm glad he's not getting the recognition for the same reasons that Danny was pointing out. Whether he's trying to use it as motivation or not, it's motivation. So,
fair enough. Well, speaking of, yeah, go ahead, Cyro.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think Jaylen Brown is just someone who he's always had, like, for some reason, the largest amount of critics for a player that I don't think really calls on those critics. It's not like he's a flamboyant or braggadocious guy, but it used to be he couldn't dribble the basketball. Okay, he worked on his ball handling, became an all-star, became a better offensive player, and I don't know. I've always just found Jaylen Brown, at least from a personal, like, fan perspective, one of the most enjoyable guys to watch because every year he adds something to his bag and he always gets better and he always surpasses what people's expectations are for him. And I think that's the coolest thing. The guy's averaging like almost 30 points a game. And I had, like you said, even if he just gets one MVP vote or whatever it may be, the guy's an all NBA player and he's shown that in the past, but like you said earlier, should be maybe even a first team. I think it's incredible to think like this guy is going to be with JT when he gets back. And this is a better version of Jaylen Brown than we've ever seen.
It's going to be interesting for sure. Speaking of awards, and we'll wrap up the news here before we move on to the next part of the pod. But Jaylen Brown does care a lot about winning awards and is slighted when he doesn't receive them. Joe Mazzulla is exactly the opposite. He does not care about any awards, and yet he keeps getting them. Specifically, he got Coach of the Month for the Eastern Conference. So we'll close with this. Joe Mazzulla has not been an NBA head coach for an incredibly long time. He has been the head coach of the Boston Celtics now for, let's see, 3-ish years, 3.5, call it. And yet in that time, he has won more games than any other NBA head coach. He's consistently shown that he's capable of leading this team throughout roster upheaval, system changes, head coaches getting fired, you name it. Joe Mazzulla tends to be pretty rock steady. He's a great interviewer, as always. And in general, it seems like he's done a pretty darn good job these past few years, winning a title and consistently having the Celtics in contention. And yet he has not ever won Coach of the Year. Do we think, given the restrictions that the Celtics have been operating under, the fact that they have been missing their best player in Jason Tatum, the fact that they have all these young guys that they're integrating into the system, they've lost all this veteran talent, and yet they just appear to be rock steady, holding strong at the Eastern Conference third seed, a couple of games out of the second seed. And seems like they're not going anywhere as long as they're healthy. Do we think this is finally the year that Joe Mazzulla can win Coach of the Year and be recognized as such?
I think it might be a little tough, but I feel like if they somehow end up as the first seed in the East, yes, definitely.
Even if they stay in the third seed, there's a chance. Just it's the kind of team that tends to win the award. But I'm not so sure I want him to win the award, only because a lot of coaches of the year get fired very soon afterwards.
That's true. It's a bit cursed.
There's a tendency there. Yeah, and Kenny Atkinson seems like he's having some struggles in Cleveland, although they've been looking a little better as of late. Other people who will be in the running for this award will include Mitch Johnson for the San Antonio Spurs, Mark Daigneault, of course, for the Oklahoma City Thunder. You have to think JB Bickerstaff and Mike Brown will also be on. So it's going to be a crowded field for Joe. That's certainly going to be true. But
I think it kind of depends on the Pistons. Like if they fall off, JB Bickerstaff's going to fall off, and then Mitch Johnson too, I guess. But I'm forgetting it's not a conference award. But I don't think they'll give it to Mark again. So
yeah,
he's got a shot. He's got a good shot.
They'll give it to Mike for the third time.
Yeah. If OKC wins 74 games, you probably have to give Mark Daigneault at that point, but we'll see. Anyway, that concludes the news, and we'll be keeping an eye on Joe and Brown and Joe Mazzulla's award race progressions as we move forward in the season. But for now, we're going to take a quick beat, and then when we come back, we'll start getting into what this team might be up to as we get into silly season with the trade deadline coming in a month and a half or so.
Welcome back, dear listener. It's time for The Steal. Cyro, you get to take over the pod. Take it in any direction you want. It can be basketball related. It can be Celtics related. It can be whatever is going on in your life related. It can be the world related. You get to drive the bus. What are we doing?
Oh, all right. Let's do. Is the NBA, I guess, trade market monopolized by, I want to say Giannis, but I also want to say agent-driven trades? Is that annoying, or is that to be expected? Because right now, like this year, it's all Giannis. Last year, the years before, it felt like every other year was James Harden, but it just kind of feels like trades used to happen so sporadically, or like throughout the season, but now it just feels like one domino is this big domino put up on a pedestal, and it just holds up everything. All the trade father and everything is just around this player that may be traded, that may be done. I just kind of feel like that, like, kind of sucks in terms of like when I was like younger. Like I like the one big trade, like I remember that like there was a lot of hype till it happened, was the Dwight Howard. Outside of that, it felt like all the other trades just happened out of a whim. Like Dwight Howard, we were just, oh, is he going to get traded for Brook Lopez to the Nets? And then he ended up going to Los Angeles like he wanted. But all the others, it just felt like things just happened out of nowhere. And now it just like we're waiting for it. We're looking for, oh, what agency? Oh, does his agent have some connection to that front office? And it's maybe it's me just wanting the, I guess, like the randomness, or just kind of wanting to have that satisfaction of like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. It just feels like it's not there anymore.
I have a theory about this. We were actually talking about this in a different context earlier today, I think, in our group chat. I think that we are looking at a paradigm shift in terms of how trades are going to go down for the rest of the CBA. And this is really, this season was really the first like pendulum swing away from the old model where agencies were driving, like Clutch, for example, being like the guiding force between so many of the major trades in recent years. But now I think what we're seeing is something more along the lines of players on these big max deals, these super max deals, being unable to be moved under the CBA unless it's in the offseason, or you just happen to get the perfect mix of players and participants, which then requires all this finessing to make happen. So I think that unfortunately for those of us who love trades, all of that action is going to be in the off season with some very minimal or some very lopsided compared to how you're used to seeing trades things going on in the near future anyway.
I'm going to just push back on that a little bit in that last year we had the biggest trade in NBA history occur in January.
Last year.
That's
It's a
true.
bit of an outlier.
But the CBA
Oh, no, but
was
not even that. No, listen, because what I mean by that is most of the teams did not, well, actually, none of the teams got hit with the full penalties of being second apron teams until this season. So, yeah, I do agree. That was a huge trade, but I think now teams are in a situation where they cannot afford to make mistakes with these kinds of players. So, very, very few teams are going to be taking the plunge, I think, on these kinds of deals, unless it's going to be for like, you might see. I think, for example, like Giannis and Trey are being connected, not just because they want to be traded, but because they are difficult players to move. And if there's anyone who's going to be trading places with anyone, I think it's going to be players like that. Let's just see if this player who doesn't work in this context can work in that context, because they're not going to get traded to a context where younger good players and or many draft picks, I think, in the future are going to be dealt at least in season because of this cap environment.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially how we're seeing a combination of the last couple big three teams be decimated in depth and never being able to, the Suns, the Nets, like they just couldn't get more than five solid guys, and the rest of the roster were just minimum contracts, and they just couldn't build up the roster. They had no trade like moves to do, so there was no way to improve that roster. And then on the other side of it, you look at the Cavs. I don't think the Cavs expected Evan Mobley to cost this much. And now they have to make a tough decision that the only way to get out of this apron is probably combining Jared Allen and Darius Garland for a cheaper return package than they wanted, solely because they're going to have to sell them, pennies on the dollar to get off that long-term money that there aren't going to be as many suitors. So they're just going to, the cap flexibility has become a luxury in my mind with this CBA.
And it also does have to be said that, currently the best team in the NBA and the team that everybody is chasing in the Oklahoma City Thunder, they obviously have three guys that they're paying a lot of money in Shea, Chet, and J-Dub. But the real strength of this team, and the thing that we've kind of been saying all year, is that aside from, having an MVP candidate in his prime, is that this is the deepest team in the league. And every year, it seems like they manage to replenish that depth with young, cost-controlled players via the draft, or just like making smart acquisitions, like Alex Caruso, getting him on a cheap deal, and kind of being able to infinitely replenish the depth. It does feel like the league is trending more towards a situation where once you have your tentpole stars locked down, the depth pieces become far more important than necessarily making a home run trade for a third star. It seems like the league is trending away from that. Now, that being said, there are still some teams that don't have their tentpole stars locked down, and you could see those teams start to make big swing moves in an attempt to get those, as well as teams that, like the Golden State Warriors, that might have one tentpole star locked down, but might be kind of fading in that regard. So I still think there's enough wiggle room that we could see one or two big moves. I agree it's probably not going to be Giannis at this point, but I do think, like, you could see Anthony Davis getting dealt at this trade deadline. I don't think I would be horrendously shocked by that. But we'll get into all of that and more as we jump in. Thank you, Cyro, for a steal that really does a nice job of segueing into the remainder of the pod. So let's talk a little bit more about the Boston Celtics and what they're going to be up to as we head towards the trade deadline and the different possibilities they'll be experiencing. First off, I'll take it to you, Cyro. Just based on your observations, what would the Celtics even be looking for at this trade deadline?
I think a blind man could see that this team needs big man depth. I think You don't even need to watch the Boston. I love Neemias Queta. Love him. This guy led the NCAA in blocks. I think this has been a fantastic find. I think he's probably a center that should be in a center by committee approach more than your only center. And that's no dish to him. It's just he's the kind of guy that you need a yin yang type thing. You need another guy in there to kind of like, to create the, different looks for different lineups. And I think Joe Mazzulla would love that. But he's a big guy. And the other thing is, I think they just need like some sort of wing besides cutting salary, but like some sort of wing. Okay.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's a two-way wing or in terms of like, so obviously he's going to have to play defense because Joe won't play him, but someone who can dribble penetrate a little bit, help collapse the defense a little, and just create some space in a way so it doesn't feel like Jaylen Brown's the only guy who's able to dribble the rock into the paint. And that way they can get even more looks from three, which I think would make Joe just ecstatic.
Yeah, I think your point in the big man, we've been talking about it all year. The big thing is that Joe Mazzulla, as a coach, loves lineup flexibility. He loves having a bunch of different guys who can do a bunch of different things. And the kind of glaring hole for this team, as much as Luka Garza's shooting has been a pleasant surprise as of late, they don't really have a big who has a truly dynamic offensive presence in that when Kristaps Porzingis was playing for this team, or even Al Horford, to a degree, those guys offered, the ability to set screens, to get to the middle of the floor and pass out of that, to hit threes and hit open shots, and most importantly, even in his older days, Al Horford, at least up until recently, was able to punish a mismatch. And if you have a big that can punish a switch or punish a mismatch, then it's feeding time for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum specifically. Those guys absolutely love having bigs that know what to do when they get a mismatch and just punish them over and over and over again. So I do think this team does not quite have that. Queta, I think, has been pretty good as a short roll man, and he's shown a
Tillman theoretically could be that, but he's just not getting on the floor for other reasons.
Yeah, we'll see about Xavier Tillman's future in Boston. Garza, good hustle player, good rebounder, pretty physical, not a particularly dynamic offensive player. And so I think that point is salient for sure. And then to your point about wings, the Celtics already have a bunch of good wings, and they notably have a really good one who, in theory, should be coming back at some point this year. But here's the thing. In the modern NBA, there's no such thing as having too many good wings. You can simply always have good wing players on the floor, and it benefits your team immensely. So I hear you there. I think that makes sense. Daniel, Justin, are there any other specific kinds of players that they should be looking for?
I mean, we mentioned a rim pressure option previously as well, but that kind of fits in with what Cyro was saying. Just someone who offers a different way to attack the basket, who can also defend well enough to actually see the floor.
Yeah, and I wouldn't hate like a mostly deep defensive center too. I mean, we know Joe likes guys who are obviously capable on offense, capable on both sides of the ball. That's just how the game is today. But with how much offense the Celtics are getting from everybody else, I think if they had like a bit of a defensive anchor center, that wouldn't hurt. Queta is kind of like that. He can also do some stuff around the rim. I don't think he necessarily excels around that rim, but like we've been saying all year, it would just be good to have another big body. Like Queta's emergence has been great. There's no doubt about that. And like you're saying, Alex, Garza has been, I would say, mostly a plus. But if they just added another guy into the mix around that height, I think it would only help them. But price is obviously a big story.
So, Cyro, typically when it comes to Celtics trade candidates, the outgoing salaries, you have, of course, Anthony Simons expiring. Sam Hauser is a guy who has also been floated for additional salary. And then you have a couple other guys, kind of at the fringes of the roster. So given who they could plausibly be sending out, assume no Jaylen Brown, no Peyton Pritchard, no Derek White, none of their kind of core pieces. I think it's probably safe to assume that they're not trading Neemias Queta at this point either. who are some candidates that you would be looking for that kind of fit, what you laid out and what we discussed?
So I think there's a couple guys. First off, the dream, Anthony Simons, and you're going to dangle him to a team that sucks at 3-point shooting or becomes desperate. I think desperate team, I think he's the Milwaukee Bucks plan C or D. If they strike on everything, I think he's maybe their last resort. So then they get like cap flexibility and they're able to do a little, because the team that he ends up going to, it's kind of going to be able, so they can either do salary cap gymnastics or they just want him for a rental because they need some extra shooting or guard depth. I mean, if Orlando becomes desperate or they suffer an injury, Tyus Jones didn't work out for them, that could be a place, and he's from the area. And it was rumored actually before he got traded to Boston that he was making a push to get sent to Orlando, and that fizzled out because I'm pretty sure what went on, Orlando didn't want to give him the extension that Portland didn't want to give him either.
They also did the Desmond Bane trade, so it got
exactly. So that all deteriorated. So let's put Anthony to the side, because that's going to be a difficult deal, and that's going to be a deal where the Celtics and the other team both kind of have to be making a compromise and making a deal that they both maybe take on an extra player that they don't want in a bigger trade. So they need to get about $4 million under the apron. There's actually a way that they can do that. They're not playing Chris Boucher or Xavier Tillman. Chris Boucher is someone that could go to a team that either gets cut so he can join the contender, or could really just be a flyer like Javonte Green was last year. Then Javonte Green got cut into it. But, some team could just give a second round to bring him on. The other, Xavier Tillman, and I really like Baylor Shireman, but unless maybe they're trying to move Sam Hauser to replace their white boy shooter with another one, and, Baylor Shireman replacing Sam Hauser. But it's either you trade Sam Hauser straight up for a player on a cheaper contract that immediately gets you under that apron, which probably the easiest way, but Sam Hauser's value is going to be for a team that is desperate for that shooting and is willing to give up the defense, or you try to consolidate underperforming players, which would be Baylor Shireman, Chris Boucher, and Xavier Tillman, and you do maybe a 2-for-3 where a team that has 14 roster spots sends you, 2 players, you send them 3, and you get 2 expiring contracts. And I think that's more realistic. And you could look at, Nick Richards is a team, the Suns, who have Nick Richards and I believe I'm blanking on his name, from Nigel Hayes Davis. You could see something like that where those 2 are packaged and you send Chris Boucher and Baylor Shireman, with Shireman being the sweetener, and that'll get you closer, and you kind of moves around the margins. I think those are kind of the names we should be looking at instead of just a swing for Simons, because at this point Simons might have more value just giving them $27 million in cap relief this offseason.
Mm-hmm. Something to be said there. So any targets that kind of jump out? You mentioned Nick Richards is one. Anybody else kind of jump out to you as someone who could plausibly fit this bill?
You guys had some great names on the list. That, first off, I am a Santi Aldama admirer. I used to have for years, pinned to my Twitter since the day that he was drafted, that he would be the biggest steal of that draft. I had friends who went to Loyola Maryland and put me onto him. And when I was talking to Darko Rajakovic, who he literally lived with Rajakovic for a whole summer, I think Aldama is, when you're talking about he's the guy that if he goes to a team like the Celtics, I think he would go to another level that people wouldn't expect, because the way that Joe Mazzulla would use his ability to pass, dribble, shoot, he's on a 3-year, $52 million deal. Oh my God, that people would talk about bargain bin guys. That's there. And the best way for that deal to work out is Anthony Simons and Sam Hauser for like KCP and Aldama, and whatever you want to work out.
Sign me up.
That's what I'm saying. The way, and you could sell it to the Grizzlies, because you tell the Grizzlies, look, you get the cap flexibility of Anthony Simons, and he helps you with, we don't know what's going on with Ty Jerome, and he gives you some guard depth, and then you get yourself Sam Hauser, which is some shooting that you need, while we take on KCP's money, which becomes an expiring after the season. Aldama's our sweet, and maybe you give up a first-round pick because they vested that time into Aldama, but I honestly feel like that would be one of the best moves you could do. Another one, Hauser for Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith makes, I think, like $8 million. Hauser makes a 10, so it'd be an easy little swap right there. And again, because you're looking for little money deals like that, or Hauser for Nick Richards, you end up getting under the cap, the apron with that one, or Hauser and Boucher for Dario Saric and Keon Ellis. I think you need to find either deals where you got a guy like Keon Ellis who's going to be a restricted free agent. He gets you that perimeter defense, it's a decent shooter, yes, albeit on a low volume. But you're either looking for these realistic bench upgrades with guys who are either expiring or have a cheap another deal that gets you to do a little bit of salary cap gymnastics, but is also addressing positional needs either in the front court or gives you shooting and helps play the salary cap gymnastic game. And that's another one with the Clippers. I loved you guys put Brooke Lopez. I think this is a great work. John Collins, Brooke Lopez for Hauser and Simons. Brooke Lopez would work where you tell Brooke, start the game, you play 6 minutes, we take you out, put Kata in for most of it. You just kind of have like this spot minutes where we just need you to play 3 and D, and I think it could work kind of in that sense, even though he's like moves incredibly weird now. And then Collins is the expiring, but kind of deals like that, I think, is realistic instead of some far-fetched one.
I like the Collins idea too, because as an expiring, you might be able to re-sign him fairly cheaply in this cap environment as well. I mean, not like anything like a super bargain or anything like that, but like mid-level exception-ish.
Exactly, and he could actually be a perfect fit. And John Collins was someone that, if you look before he got busted for PEDs, he was a double-double machine who was looking like he could be an ideal power forward in the modern day.
So there's a couple of candidates that you mentioned that were kind of on our list that, I think would definitely be good fits. I've mentioned Jay Huff if the Indiana Pacers just have an absolute fire sale and decide to start just tossing guys out. I think it would be fun. I don't know that he would necessarily be like the missing piece for this team, but he would be a fun ad. So I wrote up a list of candidates that are varying from realistic to highly implausible. I have visions in my mind of Lauri Markkanen as the third bid for this team. It would be just such a perfect fit. It is not possible. There's no way that is going to happen. But there's just I can't stress enough how much that would fit perfectly. Yeah, Danny's not going to do that. Danny's not.
Unless Danny can get him to take a pay cut and a renegotiated contract, it's still not going to work.
You say this is for what Will Hardy cost you. This is just back pay.
Right, like exactly. No, we'll see. Lauri Markkanen, perpetually a guy that like maybe should be on the move but isn't. Danny seems to really like him, but there are some other guys I'm keeping my eye on. Daniel Gafford has been a rumored Celtics target for a little bit. If the Mavs are imploding and blowing things up, there's entirely a possibility that could happen. But I'm keeping my eye on a different Western Conference team, one that has experienced some frustrating losses lately, has a significant need for additional younger ball handling and shooting, and is a little clogged in their front court with a lot of money going to 3 players. Maybe one of those players could be available for, I don't know, a little more shooting and maybe a point guard in the form of Anthony Simons. I'm looking at Naz Reid. I really think that Naz Reid could be a great fit for this team. And I the contract is tough. I grant you that. I think that it's unlikely given that he's a fan favorite in Minnesota. But the Timberwolves, after playing pretty well, have gone through a recent stretch where it looks like their offense is pretty disorganized. And they really desperately do need like another ball handler who can create for themselves off the dribble. Anthony Simons really does fit that bill to a T. And it has to be said, Rudy Gobert is having an outstanding season right now. It's not like they're necessarily hurting for big man depth. Julius Randle, fringe all-star talks. Like they have guys there such that they could maybe afford to shuffle things up in that front court a little bit. I know Naz Reid is probably not getting traded, but I'm just keeping my eye on that one.
I've got a similar guy in Jaren Jackson Jr., which we had a long discussion about today. Bill Simmons seems to think that they should move on from him. I think I tend to agree with you that he's probably held in higher regard than Bill regards Jaren Jackson, but he's similar to Santi Aldama. I think he has a lot of really good skills that would fit in as Boston's third big, but I do think that even if they did want to move him, as you pointed out, the bidding war would probably be bigger than Boston wants to participate in for the kind of player they want to add, I would think.
Daniel, do you have any targets that we missed that we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, I actually saw some of your lists, Alex, and I liked your mention of Trey Murphy. Um, obviously not like a true center, but I mean shooting, and I've always really liked this game, and he's killed the Celtics whenever he's played them.
That's true.
So it's Brad's obviously noticed, but that would be kind of hard to do, and I know he's making a good amount of money. Um, Nas Reed would be tough. He's also just such a huge fan favorite there. I feel like that might be a little bit of a roadblock as well. Gafford would make sense. And also, I just want to say thanks to Cyro for putting more practical options in here. Because the stuff I get sent and I get asked about is like, oh, LaMelo Ball in a Celtics jersey. Like, oh, this is cool. I'm like, that's not going to happen. Like, why are we even discussing this? So I appreciate the more realistic scenarios. And I mean, if we're not talking about big men, recently, Keon Ellis, the way he plays on defense, his energy, I feel like Joe Mazzulla would love that. He can shoot it too, like Cyro mentioned. That he's not a big man, obviously, but I think that would be a cool addition. And he's not making much money, and he's going to be a free agent soon. But that could be another name to watch for on a terrible Kings team.
Mm. Yeah, we have a couple other guys on here that are probably worth mentioning. The trade that I feel like I always end up coming back to is it's just so easy to do Anthony Simons for Terrence Mann and Darren Sharp, like from Brooklyn. That just feels like worst comes to worst. Everybody runs out of options. The bar is closing. You just get that done. That feels like you can just knock that out. I don't know. I'm curious about your thoughts on that one, Cyro, because to me that feels like both incredibly plausible and very easy for both teams to execute.
I 100% agree with that. I think at least this is how I envision it after conversations. If you're a competent front office, you have scenario A, B, C, and D. All right. A being the best case thing. We get the trade, we get everything. That's what we want. That's the dream. That rarely
Danny Ainge
happens.
just decides to be a sleeper agent and give Lowry Markkinen away for pennies. That's
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Turns into Nico Harrison and says we'll just have a one-man trade. Now, with C and D being the fallback plans, the ones that usually come to fruition because things don't turn out how you expect them to turn out. And I think the biggest thing people need to understand, and maybe people are so used to football where there's compensatory picks, which I think is just the weirdest thing in the world, that like my head coach or coaches can get a job and I get a third round pick for it. And, certain players will leave and I'll get compensated with picks. It blows my mind. But the thing is here is what you learn in football and applies in basketball is you never want to be uncompensated. That is the worst thing that can happen. You never want a guy to leave uncompensated. Now, with cap flexibility being so important now, some teams are cool, not being compensated if it's what they're being returned is a expiring contract.
Cap space. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because what they're compensated now is in cap space. So what are you doing here, Anthony Simons and Daron Sharp and Terrence Mann? You just gave the Brooklyn Nets cap space. And you might need to give maybe at worst a Baylor Shireman or a second round pick. But I think they gave Daron that money because it was probably more than he was going to get in free agency. And they told him, you're going to be a trade chip. All right. Well, and then you'll have an opportunity to get money again in 2027. And then with Terrence Mann, they're like, that's just, you need a way to move Terrence Mann's contract. And I think for the Celtics, you look, hey, Terrence Mann actually could end up being one of your sixth man or your seventh or eighth guy in terms of being the Swiss Army type player who can play the 2, the 3, and small ball 4, while Daron Sharp's just a rebounding beast. I think this guy's averaging 7 for 7 for his career, and then his per 36. I think he's like 15 for 15. Like, my God, Daron Sharp can get to the board.
It's basically just having 2 Luka Garzas, which would be very funny.
I do have a couple.
Yeah,
I have a couple of guys I think that might be available for Boston if they wanted to pay for them. They would require a little cajoling. If Toronto could be convinced to get rid of Mamu, Danny Kyle Filipkowski, Mo Wagner from Orlando. I think all three of those could at least fill some of the center by committee options, but I think that the cost probably is going to be too much to make it worth it. Wouldn't hurt to ask.
I have a hard time seeing Toronto moving on from Mamu when every single second that he's on the floor, the announcers in Toronto seem to be losing their minds. I think that guy's going to be in the Raptors for a little bit. Filipowski is interesting. It just feels like he's a little too young to be moving on from this early. Now, he's on the older side of draft prospects, but I don't know. Maybe
they just got him. See, these are guys that like Toronto. I'm not entirely sure what their plan is because they really seem to like Pirtle, and I'm not clear why.
Well,
in terms of Wagner,
they might like Pirtle because they have a huge contract that they can't move, and so they have to just say.
I mean, but they extended him, didn't they? So
they did.
He might be out for the season. He might be done.
Yeah, no, I know.
His back is like
another reason why he's probably not going up. Mamu is probably not going anywhere. But I mean, like guys like this, where it's unclear what the team is trying to do in general. I think there might be a guy, if not one of these guys, but someone like that appears out of nowhere that none of us were thinking about, just because they make the right call and have the right pitch.
There is a trade listed here. We mentioned Nick Richards earlier, but a Nick Richards, Grayson Allen package going back to Boston. The world in which Joe Mazzulla is Grayson Allen's coach. Holy smokes. That would be
I hate him as a player, which is why he would be a perfect fit.
The only way he could be more hated is for joining the Celtics.
Exactly. That would be watching Joe Mazzulla coach Grayson Allen would be fascinating to see. It does have to be said, the Celtics, we know for a fact at this point, I think it's pretty clear, they're going to be getting a pretty significant addition at some point in this season. What are the chances that the Celtics' big trade deadline move is simply bringing back first team All-NBA forward Jason Tatum?
I mean, pretty likely. I feel like there's a good chance that might be just what happens. Like, obviously, we know about the money woes. It's a huge issue, and they might not be comfortable with taking a big swing for sure. But even like another swing that would put them back over the aprons, Tatum's just going to be a big plus. And obviously, you don't want to assume too much with a player's coming back from an Achilles injury. And I feel like they're not necessarily relying on him this season, even though I still do think he'll come back. I don't think they're expecting like, oh, he's going to come back and we'll go to the finals now. I don't think they're necessarily counting on that. But I think it would make some sense for them to have their big addition just waiting that out and not spending much. But I would like to see maybe a lower key move like Cyro was talking about before. And I liked what you were saying, Alex, about Terrence Mann and Day'Ron Sharpe. That's pretty interesting. Simons has been playing better, so I feel like he's inflated his stock a bit. Sam Hauser is a guy I feel like if they had to move on from somebody to get rid of money, he could be the guy. Baylor's actually played decently when he has gotten in. I feel like his hustle, his defense, which wasn't really talked about, has been pretty good. His shooting is still there too, and he's young. Sam, we've pretty much seen from him, I think, what we're gonna see. So I don't know.
That's true. Although he has been playing pretty well lately. Sam Hauser, back into form.
I mean, he's a north of 40% 3-point shooter for his entire career as a basketball player at any level. I don't think they're going to move on from him too easily because he's exactly the kind of player you need for a contending team, which I think they want to be very soon. But he does solve the financial aspect very, very easily because of that value.
It's true.
Remember Simons, it kind of feels like, but
yeah. So, there's a number of moves that the Boston Celtics could make. I talked earlier about like how targeting bigs that can hunt a mismatch and like be that kind of dynamic presence is really valuable. While none of these guys perfectly fit that, does have to be said that the Celtics won the finals, and the secret sauce of that 2024 Celtics title team is that Al Horford was starting at center, but Jason Tatum was playing center throughout that entire run. So it could be as simple as, hey, we're going to get that guy back, and then the team is just going to be really good because Jason Tatum is really good at basketball. But we'll see. There are other teams, though, that are potentially going to make moves in the Eastern Conference. Cyro, are there any East teams that you are going to be looking at that could prove possible foils for the Celtics' plans if with the moves that they might be making at the deadline?
Man, I mean, I did mention the Cavaliers. I think they're going. I mean, this first off, everyone was because of Bill Simmons. Zubats. Even if there's a fire sale in LA, I think Zubats would be too expensive for Boston to even afford. I think
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
So with that being said, the player that if they were looking for a starting former all-star center, Jared Allen, it would be more realistic in my eyes because again, going back to the Cleveland fire sale. But that's the problem is that if Cleveland or one of these teams have a fire sale or become emboldened to make a move to climb up, I mean, I think there are the Milwaukee Bucks and the Atlanta Hawks, or Milwaukee Bucks out of desperation. The Atlanta Hawks are the opposite, where they feel like maybe they're going to make a move to get them using one of their players like a Kristaps Porzingis or even Trae Young or a Luke Kennard to make a move, while you have the Wizards and the Nets who are even more like emboldened to make moves to like as they're in rebuilds. I just think the Celtics, if they are trying to make a mid-level move, I think the Pistons, the Knicks, the Magic, and teams like even the Timberwolves are like, and the Suns and the Warriors are all in similar places where they don't really have the ability to make that swing for the fences move that would be like a Giannis Antetokounmpo, because that's not realistic. So we're going bargain bin hunting. We're going to the Goodwill and we're looking for the deals. And when people are looking for the deals, we all kind of look for the same deals. We're looking for a guy who's on a cost-controlled contract. We're looking for a guy who's on an expiring contract so he could be a rental piece. We're looking for a rim-running big who either creates vertical spacing, or a 3-and-D big, or a swingman who can be a 3-and-D player, and that's what the same guys, Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, Nick Richards. I just mentioned 3 Suns players, but then you go Terrence Mann, Deron Sharp for the Nets. Then you got Haywood Highsmith also on the Nets, on the Tyus Jones on the Magic, and then other guys like on the Bucks. You have the Bucks would probably be selling Bobby Portis and Kyle Kuzma. So we're all looking at the same guys: Robert Williams, Matisse Thybulle. Like we know who are the guys are going to be probably traded or being looked at. So that who's going to go for it is the one who has the best deal.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what Detroit does, because it feels like Detroit, they're on the one hand holding steady at the top of the conference. They're the 1 seed. Even though the Knicks are gaining on them, they are pretty clearly going to be an upper echelon East playoff team. But I still get the sense...
I have to stop you and just say thank you for pronouncing that right. No one ever does.
No worries. I still get the sense that when push comes to shove, they're a little too dependent on Cade to create offense. Not that Cade has been outstanding, don't get me wrong, but in the playoffs, every team that they face is going to key in on, all right, we're sending 2 at Cade as soon as he crosses half court. And they need to have an answer for that. And I don't really know that they do right now. As much as Jalen Duren has improved, as much as they have these young athletic wings, it just doesn't feel like they have that guy who's like, all right, I am the safety valve. Like, if Cade gets doubled, you're kicking the ball to me. And so I'll be really interested to see what they do, because they have a real shot to win the Eastern Conference if they play their cards correctly. That's one just for me. I don't know. Justin, Daniel, do you have any teams you're keeping an eye on in the East?
The Heat, I think, bear watching. I don't think they're going to finish the trade cycle without making some kind of a move, though it might not be the kind of like Giannis kind of like big swing move that some people have predicted.
Yeah, I would probably agree with the Pistons too, because at the moment it kind of feels like they're just like warming the seat up for the Knicks. Like they don't have much of a lead.
Duran's kind of cooling down a bit. Cade's been amazing, don't get me wrong, and this team is still feisty, scrappy, like they have all that. But the times they've come to Boston to play the Celtics, I haven't been that impressed, and their shooting is just not good. Like besides Duncan Robinson's occasional threes, and don't get me wrong, he's a good shooter, but when he's out there, it's a problem because he's a defensive liability, and Jaylen Brown and other guys were just hunting him. So then they have Cade Cunningham as well for threes. But that's like pretty much it reliably. Malik Beasley's obviously gone and doesn't seem like he's coming back for betting reasons, but it feels like now is the time they got to take a swing or they're just giving up their seat to the Knicks, which I feel like might happen, but we'll see.
So, Cyro, we'll close this down with one final question, and then we'll keep this thing moving. What is the one big trade that you're looking at as we head into this deadline? And it can be Eastern Conference, Western Conference. What's the one thing that you're most locked in on and watching?
Man, like I want to say it is the Anthony Simons move, like because that is like just one. But I think as more and more time has passed, and the Cavalier season has churned the way that it has, I know the Cavs have publicly stated that they've built in for this year that they are a second apron team. They're the only second apron team in the NBA. I cannot see if they continue to struggle as we get closer to the deadline. And if you look statistically, this first off, they are so much better without Darius Garland historically. Someone could tell me I'm wrong this season, I would believe it. But last year they were 4.8 points better without Darius Garland on the floor. And last year I think they were 0.1 better without Jared Allen. But their best player, statistically, according to Clean Glass, is Evan Mobley, which I think they're 5 points better on the floor with him. And then it's Donovan Mitchell. So, and Evan Mobley also can play center or can play with a guy who maybe is a floor spacer, and Evan Mobley is more of the interior guy who's grabbing the board. So I just think as more and more time passes, the team that might end up making the biggest noise at the deadline is a massive trade coming out of Cleveland that says Darius Garland to one team and Jared Allen to another, because Darius Garland is a good enough point guard for a team that is desperate for a point guard to trade for. The problem with Darius Garland is when they paid him, they didn't expect the CBA to be this punitive. So now Darius Garland is an overpaid point guard who is a defensive liability that is undersized and a great basketball fringe all-star. It's just you have to have a certain roster construction that doesn't have 2 6'1" guards in your backcourt. And then with Jared Allen, you have two twin towers that, yes, Evan Mobley has made such strides as a shooter, and I love Evan Mobley. And he has the possibility of, taking AD's mantle as like the best power forward for his generation. But I don't think, what is the rule of insanity? Doing the same thing, expecting different results, and you've changed the coaches, you've done this. I just think that's the one you got to be watching.
Yep.
All right. Well, Cyro, it's been a blast talking trades with you. For future stuff, if we want to, see your work or, hear more of your trade stuff and thoughts, where can we find your work these days?
You can find me either on YouTube at Cyro Asseo, CYRO, and then on Twitter, whatever social media you'll find. Mainly I just do Twitter and YouTube, and then at HoopsHype.com. I also do all of our draft analysis and then interviews and other sorts of multimedia for them.
Very cool.
Daniel, where can we find your work?
Yeah, right here on the pod or Clutch Points and Celtics Wire. Also, you can find me on Twitter where I'm doing most of my reporting and stuff, posting all that at DanielD1214.
Dr. Quinn, where can we find your work?
Everywhere Daniel said, but that Clutch Points and Elon Musk fueled disaster zone that people used to call Twitter. Not there.
I can't deny that.
Fair enough. You can find my work by following me on Instagram or Blue Sky or listening to this podcast. I'm also in a band if you like music. It's called Divine Sweater. We're everywhere. And that's going to put another bow on another episode of Havlicek Stole the Pod. As always, we close with this, Cyro. Something to remember or something to forget. We will model for you how it works, but this can be about basketball, the Celtics, the trade deadline, your life, what you had for breakfast this morning, New Year's focus. Take it wherever you want to go. Something to remember or something to forget. Dr. Quinn, will you be our first model?
Sure. The thing I'm going to forget is what it feels like to be in an earthquake in a multi-story building. You don't, if you know, you know, and if you don't, you do not want to know. Have a good to-go bag ready, all that good stuff to get out of the house. If you start to feel the trembling, go to a load-bearing wall, get underneath the door frame, something like that. Remember all those things, but good Lord, I need to forget what earthquakes feel like. Yeah.
Mr. Daniel, do you have something to remember or something to forget?
Yeah, I got both. I'm going to
Please.
remember how great Jaylen Brown's been. I know we discussed it a little, but still I think it bears repeating. I mean, he tied Larry Bird's record for the 30-point straight games. He also has just been like the engine of this team. And there was a lot of noise, I will say, preseason of like, oh, he's going to get exposed. Like, now that he's the primary option, he's going to, like, we're going to see his flaws. And that has been the exact opposite of what's happened. And then just a quick thing for forgetting how to pronounce upper echelon. I always thought it was echelon because there's also a big song that they keep saying upper echelon in it. So I always thought that was the pronunciation, but it's not. I honestly did not know that.
Never trust musicians as a rule. For myself, I am going to say something to remember is that New Year's resolutions are fun and good and helpful in many respects, but you do not need to adhere to them as if they are a way of life. They are not God. They are not religion. You are in control of your own life, or you are in control of your own life, rather. And if you end up whiffing on your New Year's resolution within 2 weeks of starting it, give yourself a little forgiveness and keep trying. Don't just give up immediately after you lose it once. It'll be fun.
It's a resolution, not a New Year's position.
Correct. Cyro,
Should be
anything
resolved.
to remember or forget to close this out?
I'm going to do to remember. And I mean, I try to do this all the time. It's kind of, I'm going to do a two-part. Shout out Julia Roberts. I saw her say this on last night. But I've made this kind of a focus of mine is always to look people in the eyes. But especially when like I'm walking in public or anything, I always say hi to people. But I just now want to make it an effort, just, every single person I walk by, I try to make them look them in the eye and say, hi, good morning, whatever. And I always tell people this, tell people to appreciate them. People don't hear that they're appreciated enough. So go whenever you get food, whatever you do, just tell them, thank you, I appreciate you. And that little word, I appreciate you, you will see people's faces light up. You will see it puts a smile on people's faces, because I don't think anyone, whether it's customer service, someone on the phone, your family, just saying I appreciate you is just a small token of gratitude that goes a lot further than people think, because I think everyone wants to be appreciated and they don't hear it enough.
That's very sweet. And I appreciate you coming on to the podcast today, Cyro. Thanks so much. This has been another episode of Havlicek Stole the Pod. We'll talk to you soon. Have a lovely new year.
But Havlicek steals it over the side wall. Havlicek stole the ball.